So good, so good, so good.
Great gifts for mom? We've got them. And they're up to 60% off at Nordstrom Rack stores now.
You know they have Marc Jacobs?
Gotta show mom some love.
That is so good.
Snag amazing deals on Mother's Day gifts from Barefoot Dreams, Kate Spade New York, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Hey, I'm Greer. Welcome to the Unfinished Idea podcast, a space for you to expand your understanding about the neurodiverse world, which is all around us. Whether you're a parent, a friend, a teacher, or a neighbor, everyone is welcome to join us as we help bring awareness and better understanding about those who are neurodivergent and families who are raising children with special needs. I'm a mom to 2 boys and 2 dogs, and together with my husband, raising a child with additional needs. I often feel lonely and overwhelmed in my daily experience because life looks different for us. This podcast will share practical help, tips, and insights into the difficulties, joys, and differences of the neurodiverse world. So let's start the conversation. Hey guys, I am super excited for our conversation today with Claire from All Aboard ADHD. We talk about her journey in finding out that she was neurodivergent as well as her children, and how she started asking questions at the school gate to grow support and community, and how that has grown from just a few mums to, well, a whole group of people. So let's grab your drink and let's dive in, because I can't wait for you to hear all about just, well, ADHD. Before we jump into today's episode, I have put together a podcast listener survey that I would love for you to fill out. This survey is just here to help me craft the show better, make sure I'm talking about topics you want to hear, and overall serve you and your families. By filling out the survey, you will be automatically entered into a draw where you can win some amazing fun prizes like merch from the podcast that is not yet public, as well as some of my favorite things and even a call with me. So go down to the show notes and click on that link that's called Podcast Survey. And if you don't mind, just filling it in. Now let's jump in. So Claire, you are passionate about ADHD for kind of lots of different reasons, but kind of why did you start navigating the neurodiverse world? What kind of led you on this journey?
I mean, it was one of those things where I suddenly found myself in it, I think is the best way to put it. I've got 2 children. I've got a 13-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And my son was diagnosed with ADHD age 6.5. So like nearly 7.5 years ago now. And that actually came as a bit of a surprise, which will sound strange for the people who are stuck on years-long waiting lists at the moment. But I was just really struggling. I had a toddler. Everything that I was doing just didn't seem to work. And I thought it was me. So when I first went to a GP for help, at no point did I think that there was something, in inverted commas, like wrong or different about my son. I just thought, what am I doing wrong here? And I was very fortunate to get a quite quick referral from a GP to a child psychiatrist. And in those days, pre-COVID, we used to do things face to face. And my son was kind of bouncing off the walls in that very first meeting. And obviously things had been identified at school, but he was still probably in those early years where it perhaps wasn't that different to many of the other boys, but it was certainly, there was an awareness. And at the end of that first appointment, he said, I think I could give you a diagnosis, but obviously we have to go through the proper process. And I was really taken aback. I was like, a diagnosis? That's not what I'm here for. I'm here because you need to help me. And then fast forward, he was given an ADHD diagnosis. And so, best part of 7.5 years ago, I suddenly found myself in a world that I knew nothing about. Like most people, I knew the name and a very, very top level, very stereotypical view of what I thought that was, and suddenly just catapulted into something that I felt really alone with. And that really began the journey, and a journey that's actually sort of become my passion and vocation in life, which I never could have anticipated right back at that stage. Brilliant. We've got the diagnosis. We can move forward. That's it, done. And obviously that's just the beginning, as I well know, and I'm continuing to learn every day. But that's really what started this for me.
Yeah, that kind of being catapulted. And I think for a lot of people, that is a correct description and feeling of kind of, for particularly children, when their child is given diagnosis. I know even for myself, like our son has ADHD and autism, and we've known that for quite a while actually. But to have that diagnosis, to hear those kind of words, I even felt catapulted into it a bit more. And so I think that's a really good description of how people feel and how the journey starts. It's not always an easing into it. Kind of is like, all right, there you go. But what would you want to say to the parent, the mom who has just had that feeling, that just kind of catapulted feeling into the neurodiverse world?
Oh, you are not alone. That's really how I felt. Actually makes me feel a little bit emotional saying that, because that was the overwhelming feeling that I had, that I just didn't know anybody at that point in time who was going through the same thing. And obviously I very quickly learned that that couldn't possibly be true in a real life sense in school and so on, the local community, but it felt like that. And I felt so acutely aware of those differences. And a big part of that was judgment too, what other people were thinking and how they were perceiving my son, because he was so little and so amazing, but obviously a lot, this big ball of energy, particularly at an age where kids are really trying to navigate those first sort of social dynamics of play dates and the school playground. And so I think for anybody listening, you are not alone, I promise you. And even if you feel that you don't have friends yet, and I use the word yet because I think that's important, who are in that same boat, you will find them very quickly. And it's to try to build those connections and reach out to those communities. And it is honestly the main reason that I do what I do, because I never, ever want anybody to feel as alone and as isolated as I did at the beginning of that journey. And everybody handles it in a very different way. As you said, your child is still your child. Like nothing changes. They're still this amazing person that just needs to be understood. And I think when you start very slowly to find your people and be surrounded by those who you can talk to honestly without judgment, or you can turn to for advice or with questions, then it just starts to make things a little bit easier. And for me, in those days, Instagram wasn't and social media wasn't a kind of wealth of information that it is today. I sent out of pure desperation a DM to an amazing woman called Kate Pearce, who I didn't know. I just came across a blog that she'd written for Selfish Mother. And for the first time ever, I read this very honest account on her part of her son. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's my son. And I sent this message to her just to say, you get it. I get it. Like, talk to me. And I'm so grateful to her because she responded to me immediately. And I've actually just had the pleasure of interviewing her for my podcast. And believe it or not, it's the first time we've ever had an actual conversation that isn't a message over a DM. We've still never met to this day. But I really credit her with helping me begin that journey. And I guess to a degree also changing my mindset a little bit about this. And she was the first friend, I guess, in inverted commas, because I'd never met her. I still never met her in real life. And from there, I then realised that I had to do something differently. I very quickly found it didn't exist locally. So then I built one, because I think it is, that expression, it takes a village. And I think never is that true when you've got neurodivergent children.
Yeah. I talk a lot about my village and building that village, because I've never felt so isolated or lonely in my life, especially kind of when we're still figuring out, we're still figuring out our son, but just that, that really kind of when he was 3, 4, really trying to figure it out and really trying to just understand. And so, yeah, that idea that a village can look, but it doesn't have to, like you said, it doesn't have to be just in person, although that is important as well. But like, it can be people online. It can be, people that like, you've never physically met, but, have that kind of community because they just get it. I like that idea that find people who just get it, you don't have to explain yourself.
Yeah. And we're time poor, right? As parents, all parents are, but particularly when you've got neurodivergent kids, it can be even harder to find ways of connecting in real life, whatever that needs to look like to you, whether that's a WhatsApp group that's just there, that that if you need them or you've got a question, you can reach out, whether it is meeting up in person, whether it's listening to podcasts. It's why I created my podcast. I wanted to provide a resource for parents wherever they are on that journey that is permanently there, that it's free to access. I don't number the episodes of my podcast very deliberately because I don't want people to feel like, well, if you didn't start from the beginning, you can't just jump in. You've just got to find the bits that are relevant to you because all children are so unique and different, even with the same diagnosis. And I just very, very much wanted to.
Yeah, that's so true. Like every child is different, even though they have the same diagnosis. I've seen that happen with school friends and even just in our family. Just because they have the same diagnosis does not mean how they react to something is the same. So that's a really good, reminder. You've talked about building a in-person community. Do you mind sharing what does that look like and how did you start that, if you don't mind?
No, not at all. I'd love to talk about it because, so as I mentioned, I couldn't find a community. There wasn't one. I live in Winchester, which is a city, but a very small city. And at that point, there really was nothing. So what began as me just talking really openly and honestly at the school gates very quickly became other parents saying, oh, could I talk to you? Or could I put my friend in touch with you? And that kind of snowballed from there to make me realise, well, obviously there's lots of people who need this. It's not just me. And then I set up ADHD Winchester, which is a community where I live, and we do a mixture of things. So we have a really active WhatsApp group, and then we also meet in person kind of usually like once every quarter, once every 3 months. And actually there's far less people that meet in person versus that are active in the community from a kind of WhatsApp perspective. But it's just there if you want to connect, if you want just the excuse to have a night out or just to be around like-minded people who understand. And in many ways, that's how actually the podcast then evolved, because even though I'd set up ADHD Winchester, I still found that people were saying, oh, could I meet you for a coffee? Could we have a phone call? Need is, I mean, beyond where I live, there's only so many hours in the day and so many one-to-one conversations that you can have. And I wanted to create a resource. I'm also acutely aware that I live in a really affluent, privileged part of the country, and we might have access to resources or the wherewithal that perhaps other people aren't so fortunate to. But I really firmly believe that everybody's child deserves the same support and to have their needs met. And so I really wanted to create something that was for everybody in that really accessible way. And it's a huge part of why I went on to train to become an ADHD coach as well, because I am immensely passionate about supporting children and parents through this journey, particularly helping children understand themselves and their unique brain and to build their self-esteem, because often that's been quite crushed through things like school experiences and stuff, sadly. So yeah, it has been an evolution over the last 7.5 years. And I never stopped learning. Like you said, you're still learning about your son. That's absolutely true of me. I learn new stuff every day, and I'm immensely privileged to be able to have these incredible conversations now with experts, and that never stops. And I hope it never stops either, because wherever our children are in their life stages, we'll be presented with new situations and new challenges that we haven't come across yet. So I feel like, in a funny way, fate takes you down a path, and it was one that began in a very lonely, isolated, incredibly difficult way, in a way that broke me at times, you know, when I'd be on my knees, and I feel now like, wow, what a privileged position that I'm in, that I hope I can just help other people along the way.
I would say probably a very similar experience to me of being in a place where you were broken and literally on your knees going, what are we doing? To now, getting to have conversations with people. And every conversation I learn something from, which is I'm grateful for. I kind of joke that even if I only get one listener, I'll still keep going, because I'm learning so much from every conversation. Yeah. And that idea that there is so much to be learned, you know, I'm really thinking about that statement what you said of like same diagnosis, but very different children or unique children. And that's just so much of the neurodiverse space is, you know, you can say autism, but that can mean 20 million different things depending on the child. And so the idea that I don't think we'll get to a point where we know everything when it comes to kind of this space, because it's always changing. There's new things happening, but because the people are all so unique and different as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, you know, social media is an amazing thing, but there's also a lot of misinformation, whether that's through unhelpful headlines or things that do get posted online with people from their own experiences that perhaps then may also inadvertently mislead sometimes people's own understanding of what is actually a really complex and fascinating neurodiversity. And I feel very like you, so grateful to have these conversations, but also that I get this opportunity to really make very evidence-based, factually correct current information accessible to people in a kind of boiled down version, so that people have got the facts from which to then base some of their decisions or their understanding or how they move forward. And that's really important to me.
Yeah. And I know I always, when I post on social media or share, I always try and caveat that this is my experience or this is the experience of my friend, so it's like I try and caveat that because it's different for everyone and experiences depend on so much of what's happening. So it's really important to know that when you have conversations or post stuff on social media or see stuff on social media, you don't even have to post who is this and where is this coming from and what evidence do they have? Not that they have to prove themselves every time, but I posted something about relationships and someone said, where did you get this? And I said, oh, here's the links to the articles I read. Please tell me if, I couldn't find anything that was longer than 7 years. So if there's more out there, I would love to, know more. And they DM'd me and said, you're the first person who's ever sent me links that when I've asked for them. And I was like, to me, like you said, it is important to make sure there's bite-size factual evidence out there. Facts, that kind of bite-size realities, I guess.
Yeah. And everyone does this in their own way, don't they? Everyone responds, whether that's the initial diagnosis or how they're coping and functioning with that. And mine was just to learn and to read. And so if I can help share that in some way with other people and build on that learning myself every day, because I always say that I'm not an expert. I'm continuously learning like everybody else. I just have, I guess, the benefit of lived experience, those kind of anecdotal knowledge and understanding from community, a bit like you were saying with your friends, and then also the privilege of getting to talk to actual experts who are doing this stuff and changing our understanding every single day.
Sorry, you're like, it sounds really bad, but you're like blowing my mind right now. Like you're saying just so many things that you're like, I'm like, yes, I can relate to that. So thank you.
So
that's probably why I'm like slow to I'm just absorbing all that you're saying. Sorry. So
I was just listening back to it from an edit perspective. And that was exactly what I was aware of myself. It was one of those episodes where you could almost hear my brain processing what the person was saying in relation to my own thoughts and experience, because it was so relevant to me in that moment in time, along with, making my way through the kind of podcast interview itself. So I get that. Yeah. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. I'm aware sometimes I'm like, I can't fangirl. Like because I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Anyways, on a separate note, you talked about being at the school gate. Kind of that's where some of the in-person support or conversations, I should say, started.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior, and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
How can a parent, maybe they don't feel comfortable kind of starting to talk about it at the school gate, but is there someone, maybe within school that they could start to talk about and ask if there's other people, or I don't know, I guess how can a parent kind of start to find that in-person community for themselves?
Do you mean in terms of the context of at school and the support at school, or do you mean outside of it?
I was thinking kind of both. I guess I was thinking more kind of outside, but maybe other parents. So it's not necessarily school supporting them, but it's parents getting support maybe at the school gate or with other parents, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, everybody processes this information, don't they, in different ways. And I guess it depends where you are on that journey, because the waiting lists are very tragically years long for a lot of children. And you may well have either had things flagged by the school that there's some differences or challenges, or you might be well aware of that acutely at home and trying to begin that process. And I think it's really just important to say, whether you are pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis, kind of wherever you are on that journey, then please do reach out, because there will be somebody where you are, and there will be many, many people who've been where you are. And you don't need a diagnosis to be able to reach out and have conversations with people who understand. And you also don't need a diagnosis to begin to get some support for your child at a needs level at school either. Although, of course, the diagnosis really helps you identify specifically what that is. But I guess if you feel brave enough to be honest, like share that information, share that diagnosis with people. Every single expert that I have spoken to has said that early intervention is everything. So as a parent, if you're aware if that's the case, if you've begun that process, if you've got a diagnosis, then you are doing the most amazing job for your child. And I think speak up and share that information, because I guarantee that even if the person you're talking to has never personally experienced it, they will have heard of or know somebody who has. And I think it's those connections that can help bring you in to help you find your people wherever it is you live. And also via the school, hopefully through, if not the teacher themselves, and again, this will depend on the child's age, but, the SENCO should have an awareness of what's going on in the local community too, and may be able to signpost you to some of that stuff. At my daughter's school, she's really aware of the fact that we exist and what we're doing. And likewise from a medical perspective, if you've had that referral, then it may be that they also know and can point you in the direction of people who can help you locally. And obviously social media is an amazing tool from that perspective too. If you feel that you're struggling initially to meet others, literally at the school gates or on the playground, I feel as though I've met so many people through somebody, where someone has said, can I pass on your number? Would you be willing to chat to my friend? How do they join your group? And we are so open and so inclusive of all, even if we're doing one of our meetups, you don't have to be a pre-existing member of the group. If you want to come along and you just want to meet some people and you want to chat, then we're always there. And I think also I'm aware that it can probably feel a little bit overwhelming if you're at the beginning of that process and suddenly you're thrown into conversations with people who are much further down the line, whether that's as they're navigating medication or they're talking about very specific school challenges. That can also feel like quite a lot. But it's just important to remember that you don't have to participate in all those conversations. A bit like I was saying with the podcast episodes, try and pick and choose the bits that are relevant to you at that time. And if you've got a question, then ask it, because there will be somebody, if not multiple people, who will be able to offer you some insight or personal experience that might just help you.
Yeah, that's a really good point of just kind of asking questions that are relevant to you. And like you said, you don't have to consume everything that's being talked about. You just need to filter through what is just relevant to you in that moment. And not having to join in with every conversation, but just what's in front of you.
Yeah. And that goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning about how unique every child is, even with that shared diagnosis. What you will be experiencing, there'll be lots of similarities, but there'll be differences too. And I think it is, certainly for me, it was really important to build and begin my own education in that, so that I could start to understand what was just going on for my child and why. Because actually some quite simple but core basic facts as a foundation can really help change your relationship with your child as you're trying to navigate this together. Because, we definitely, for all the things I talk about on the podcast, I'm a human being, and there are days when I absolutely get it wrong. There are days when I'm maybe struggling a little bit more myself, and I don't always handle situations in the best possible way. But I think it's the fact that you're constantly trying to learn, trying to do better, and trying to help support your child.
Yeah. As you're both navigating this, that's so true. It's not just you as the parent navigating this or you as the carer, but your child is also trying to navigate this. They're trying to learn the world, but also, as a child with, additional need or brain wired differently, they are also trying to navigate it. So doing it together, I think, is a good mindset to take, and recognizing that you're both on this journey. You're both together, kind of hopefully working together on that journey.
I think it's a process as well, because there's many stages to your understanding and acceptance of diagnosis and family life, because we all have idealized ideas of what we think our life will be like when we have children, and actually coming to terms with those differences can be really difficult too, and that takes time. Like, there's just no quick way through some of that. I definitely experienced that myself in the beginning. It is something that you just have to go through, and it does evolve and change, and it does get easier with age for sure. But people start this process at different times, don't they? I was immensely fortunate with my son. He was so young, at only 6.5 when he was diagnosed. Lots of people are perhaps not getting those diagnoses until they're in secondary school. And then that brings a whole different set of circumstances, because you might feel that you know your child better, but you might not understand why they're having the challenges that they're having. I'm talking about this from the perspective of a parent who started that process quite young, and that I'm well aware that that's really different if you've got a teenager, and you've got a whole different set of circumstances to navigate there too.
Yeah, I think about the film Inside Out. I always kind of say it was written for everyone. It's a great movie, but specifically for families of neurodivergent kids, because they talk a lot about that sadness and joy walking hand in hand. And I feel a lot of that to be my journey of sadness in things that what I thought my parenting journey would be, or what I thought things would look like, but how my child has brought so much joy, and how he is wired. And, some of the things, like, I mean, if my child didn't have ADHD and autism, I wouldn't be doing a podcast. So, like, there are some great joys in that. And just, like that idea that it's a journey, just like that film. As much as I'm more like Joy, I would rather solve the problem quickly and be done with it. It shows us there's a journey to go on, and it's okay to walk on that journey with both those emotions, all the emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you mentioned that film as well, because the second one, Inside Out 2, I loved actually even more than the first one, because I think it takes it to a different level where it just does such a phenomenal job of articulating certain things in an age-appropriate way for children, but also for adults too, right? Because in many ways, we're learning about ourselves through this process. I've got an ADHD diagnosis now, but I only really learned about myself through going through it with my son. But the way that it looks at anxiety as just something that's trying to keep you safe, and when you can understand what's going on, how you can learn to navigate some of that stuff. But also what's beautiful about it, we kind of touched on the teenage thing there. I think it brings in the hormonal element to it and adds that other complexity that can make some of this stuff either more challenging, or actually it can be a point in a child's life when things come to the surface. I've had it shared with me that actually often in secondary school, with girls, because they're such high maskers, and don't often have the same perhaps disruptive issues earlier on in their school lives, that it can be at that point in time where they're going through puberty, at the same time that the expectations at a learning level are ramping up, that suddenly it's no longer possible for them to keep the mask on, and it all kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. So it is really important to just be aware of the impact of different stages in a child's life and what that's then going to present.
Yeah. And I know, a lot of kind of late diagnosed women are diagnosed because of hormonal changes. And so again, that idea of things are, like you said, they're not able to mask anymore, so it is that idea that, there are lots of things happening in our bodies, both men and female, but like that are happening that mean, these things are coming to the surface, and to take note of them. I think that's something I'm hearing is, to not just push them down, but to go, why is this, and kind of, I don't want to say question yourself in a bad way, but just in a, why is this happening, or why am I feeling this way, or why can I?
It's that I'm very much fall into that category, and I think it's hard when you are trying to navigate and understand the needs of your children at the same time that you've got hormonal changes happening within yourself, and you start to become aware of your own neurodivergence. And there is a really significant role that hormones plays in that for women, right, as you mentioned. And, the kind of early awareness of the perimenopausal symptoms because of having an already challenged executive function, and then adding in the impact of what the kind of declining hormones does to that too can really throw a lot into the mix for you to navigate for yourself as a mum. And that makes things hard. And it's almost like the perfect storm, isn't it? You know, you're trying your hardest to help support your child at a time when you're trying to figure out certain things within yourself too. So yeah, fun times.
Yeah, very much. Well, it is. We could keep talking, I feel like, for a long time. But before I ask my last question, you've mentioned that you have your own podcast called All Aboard ADHD. And I would love for you just to give a quick 30-second, I don't know if review is the right word, I can't think of the word, but just a little preview of what your podcast is like so people can find you.
Thank you. I would love to. So it's called All Aboard ADHD and it helps parents navigate the ADHD journey. It's an ADHD podcast specifically for parents. And episodes alternate between experts in the field sharing key evidence-based, credible information alongside parents who are sharing their real life lived experience just to help you feel less alone. It's always on. The episodes are released fortnightly, so there's a new episode every 2 weeks. And whether that's something that you're looking for in terms of more information about a particular topic, or you're just looking to hear that other people are in the same boat as you, then hopefully it has something for everybody. You know, if you are new to this, you can start right at the beginning with very basic but important information like what is ADHD and how ADHD is assessed. And I've just done the most amazing comprehensive episode with a professor on ADHD medication. And that just covers kind of everything parents need to know if they're beginning to go down that path. They've got some bits and pieces going on that they're just trying to understand and figure out a little bit more, and sort of everything in between. So you can dip in and out of it in terms of whatever is relevant to you and where you are on that stage in the journey.
That sounds like you can jump in whenever. So it's not like you have to follow a series. So I'm sure it will be very helpful for so many people. It is helpful for so many people. And just that, again, having that balance of evidence-based, but also personal experience, I'm sure is a helpful combo. So everyone can kind of get their teeth in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very much about parents knowing that they are not alone and that we are all in the same boat and we're here to help each other.
Well, I'd like to end every episode with this question. So what do you want the world to know about neurodiverse people?
The world just wouldn't exist the way it does without neurodivergent people. We need people who think differently. Those are the change makers. Those are the people that change the world and will create the world we know and that we live in every single day, whether that's technology or through their amazing creative brains and innovations. It's just really unfortunate that we have a very rigid education system that doesn't seem to allow for divergent thinking, or anybody who just can't sit still and be quiet and concentrate for long periods of time, which is so sad because we don't want to crush the spirit of our kids because the world needs them. And I feel so passionate about trying to preserve kids' self-esteem as much as possible through that process. And I've often asked parents in my community, if you took school out of the equation, would you have a problem? And the answer is always no. And that just really breaks my heart because, you know, teachers are obviously doing absolutely the best that they can in the context of the system that they're working within. But yet this system just doesn't work for our children. And then as parents, we try our hardest in the ways like you with your podcast, me with my podcast, whatever, to bridge the gap for our children. But they are so unique and they're so amazing. And I think for every challenge, there is the opposite strength. And if you can learn to understand your brain and why you're having the challenges that you're having with that ADHD lens, with that neurodivergent lens, then very quickly, the flip side of that is you can also learn the skills to be able to navigate this stuff and really allow yourself to move forward and become the best person that you can possibly be. But the world needs our children. They are so amazing. You know, ADHD, any neurodivergence is way more than the stereotype that people often misunderstand it to be, or the media headlines might suggest. Underneath it is the most fascinating, complex neurodivergence that it genuinely excites me every single day. And I guess for the future, my biggest hope is that right now the diagnosis is so important because without it, in the limitations of our education system, our kids can't get the support that they need. My hope is that we move beyond that to a world where actually we're catering for the unique learning needs of all children, and that the diagnosis itself becomes less important. That's really my hope. In the meantime, I just want to do everything I can to really help educate people to understand ADHD, how the ADHD brain works, and what we can do to help support our children. But also, this is relevant to adults, mums having late diagnoses too. So that's a very long-winded answer, but
if school was taken out of the equation, what would it look like? And how, like you said, there are so many individuals who are working so hard. It's just the system isn't working. And because that system isn't working, it has so many knock-on effects. And so, trying to fix that system, trying to bridge that gap is important. It's creative, wired differently brain people who are kind of doing that.
I just want to level the playing field for our children. I've always said that about my son, but that's what I'm trying to do. And get them through the school system with their self-esteem intact so that they can go on to believe in themselves and their abilities and have a bright future.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for having this conversation with us and sharing your experiences and kind of what you've learned on this journey.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really nice to chat to you. I think we could have just carried on this conversation all day. And it's always strange to be on the other side of the conversation too. But I'm so grateful for you having me today. Thank you.
Did you know executive dysfunction can make simple tasks like starting a shower or replying to a text feel overwhelming and nearly impossible? Executive dysfunction affects the brain's ability to plan, start, and complete tasks. It's not about being lazy, it's about struggling to initiate action, even when someone wants to. A simple task like responding to a message, washing dishes, or getting dressed can feel as difficult as climbing a mountain. Strategies like body doubling, where you have someone nearby for accountability, or breaking tasks into micro steps can help overcome executive dysfunction. Make sure you are following the show on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. When you hit the follow each week, the episode will show up straight in your podcasting feed. See you next week.
Are you looking for your new favorite podcast that's both entertaining and will challenge you in your walk with Jesus? Hey, we're Mac and Ken's from the For the Girl podcast.
Every Tuesday, we break down everything that we wish someone had told us in our 20s. From faith and relationships to wild career transitions, we're getting real about all of our mess-ups and the things God has taught us along the way.
Think of us as your hilarious weekly dose of honest conversation with your internet besties who've been exactly where you currently are. So come check out For the Girl on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you love to listen to podcasts. And make sure to click follow on our show so that each new episode is dropped right into your personal feed.
Hi, dear one. I'm Dr. Edie Wadsworth, your new favorite Christian life coach, and I want to invite you to the House of Joy podcast. If you're a woman over 40 or the daughter of one who wants to build a positive mindset, healthier habits, and thriving relationships, this is the show for you. We talk about personal growth, faith, resilience, and creating a life you're obsessed with. So if you're tired of feeling stuck and ready to step into more joy and purpose, come join us. Listen now wherever you get your podcast.